Hi, my name is Daphne.
And I'm Lily.
And I'm Maria, and today we'll be talking about ADH and alcohol tolerance.
The objective for this experiment is to investigate the function of the enzyme alcohol dehydrogenase and the fruit fly Drosophila melanogaster.
The reason why we use fruit flies is because they have a short life cycle and they're easy to maintain in the laboratory, and their genetics is very well understood. And they have been used as a model organism in genetics for about 100 years.
For this experiment, we hypothesized that the ADH minus fruit flies will be terminated in the wine capsule. The ADH plus fruit flies will show no changes in behavior, and the flies in water environments will not show any changes.
Materials and methods. For this experiment, the materials needed were fruit flies, wine, water, and vials.
Now, as you can see, we have 4 pictures of 4 different vials. In the first one, we put a cotton ball that was soaked in water, and then the flies that were put in there were ADH plus, which means they weren't mutants. And in the second vial of water, they were ADH minus. Now, the same goes for the wine cotton ball vials. In these two, they have wine in the cotton balls, and in one vial, we put ADH plus flies, and the other vial we put ADH minus flies.
And after doing these methods, we had to observe the flies and any changes in their behavior for 24 hours.
Here we have data tables that represent the data collected from the 4 environments where the flies were in. The behavior and the survival of the fruit flies were observed at different time intervals, as you can see here. Throughout the experiment, majority of the flies survived with the exception of one, death after 24 hours in the ADH plus fruit flies in water, and the same for ADH minus in water. Since these 2 flies died after 24 hours, we cannot account for the exact reason of their death. In the ADH minus wine vial, there were no survivors present after 24 hours.
In the vials that contained water, we observed that the fruit flies were more constantly active, and the fruit flies in the wine vials were not as active, and they tended to stay at the bottom of the vial. We also observed that at the 1 hour point, the wings of the flies in the wine vials were spread out, while the fruit flies in the water vials, their wings were tucked in.
So based on this information, we could see that the ADH plus flies were the control groups for both alcohol and water, and these flies were known as the wild type. The ADH minus flies were the experimental groups, and they were known as the mutants. So for the control group, the ADH plus fruit flies, they were able to break down alcohol, leading them to have a tolerance to alcohol. Unlike the control group, the experimental group showed differences in their behavior as mentioned before, and we were able to conclude that because of the ADH mutation that the ADH minus flies contain, this reduces the ability of the flies to tolerate alcohol, which led them to an alcohol intolerance. Here you could see a visual representation of what we were talking about in the previous slide. As you can see at this initial time for the flies, you can't really see them because they are constantly moving. And after 24 hours, the ADH minus fruit flies in wine, you could see that they were already dead.
Here we have a graph that represents the class average for initial and surviving fruit flies after 24 hours. Our x-axis represents the environments of fruit flies were in, and our y-axis represents the number of survivors. We can see in the blue bars represent the number of flies that were initially in each environment, and the red bar represents the number of flies that survived after 24 hours. As we can tell in the ADH minus in alcohol, there weren't any survivors after 24 hours. This supports our hypothesis that the flies in the ADH minus in alcohol weren't going to survive, while in the other ones, they will remain alive. We read an article that proposed that all applicants for a driver's license must undergo a genetic test for alcoholism susceptibility. Here are a few discussion questions we're going to talk about. Number 1, how might the lack of ADHD product lead to alcoholism? Is this based on sound science?
Well, so the ADH gene, it controls basically a person's alcohol intolerance or tolerance. Therefore, if the person is lacking the ADH gene, they won't have a tolerance to alcohol, which means that they will keep drinking and it wouldn't really affect them. Therefore, there's a bigger chance that the person could turn to alcoholism. But we are not sure if this is based on sound science because it is still sort of, being experimented on.
Number 2, is this law constitutional?
This law is not constitutional because it really discriminates against the people who have this gene. They didn't choose to have this gene and it was out of their control, so it wouldn't allow them to at least purchase alcoholic beverages without the ability to obsessively drink all the time.
Number 3, does this law solve all causes of drunk driving?
I'm pretty sure no, it does not, because even if this law was passed, it would just mean that the people without the ADH gene won't be able to buy alcohol and drink and drive. But the other people who do have this ADH gene, who are normal, so to say, they'll still, drink and drive, and then there will still be a lot of drunk driving happening on the road.
Number 4, is the law enforceable? If so, how would you enforce it?
Well, the law, it really isn't enforceable because people will go out of their way to buy alcohol for other individuals that want it. Even though people are going to get fined or sent to jail, people will still get away with buying alcohol.
Number 5, would you be in favor of such law? Why or why not?
I would not be in favor of such a law because, like we just said, the law is not really enforceable, and also it doesn't solve a lot of cases of drunk driving. And like Maria had said, people, if they're not allowed to get alcohol, they'll still find a way to get it. Sort of like, prohibition times, people still found a way around it, they still got alcohol.
Number 6, would you be in favor of a similar law for those that were genetically predisposed to pedophilia or violent behavior?
I wouldn't be in favor of a similar law because in reality, you really couldn't tell if a person is going to be a pedophile or is going to have violent behavior based on their genetics. I think environment also plays a really big part on how a person behaves in society. So it would really be like a waste of time to make a law for everybody.
Number 7, would you consider seriously dating or marrying someone that was found to be genetically predisposed to infidelity?
Yeah, I think I would consider dating them or marry them because it's just genetically predisposed. It's not, genetically imprinted. It's not saying that they will for sure, cheat on me, but instead they're more likely to. But it's kind of like saying if someone's parent was a drug addict, it doesn't mean that their child will be a drug addict. So I think in the end, it's just genetically predisposed. There's a chance, but it's not for sure.
Here are the sources we used for the experiment.
Thanks for watching our video.